I'd now like to open the session. Welcome to meeting number 4 of the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs. The committee is meeting today to hear representations of the House of Commons on the rehabilitation of Centre Block. Today's meeting will be taking place in hybrid format, pursuant to the Standing Order passed on November 27th, 2021. Members can participate in person or through Zoom. Deliberations are broadcast on the House of Commons website. For your information, the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than all of the committee members. I'd like to take advantage of this opportunity to remind all participants and observers to this meeting that no screenshots are allowed. It is not allowed to take any photographs of your screen. Given the current pandemic situation and in the light of health authorities' recommendations, as well as the PROC directive of October 19th, 2021, and the House order of November 25th, to keep the health and security of all of the people participating in meetings in person, must maintain physical distancing of 2 meters, must wear a non-medical mask when circulating in the room, and it is highly recommended that the mask be worn at all times, including when seated. They must hand wash and use disinfectants and hand sanitizers that are provided at the entrance to the room.
I would like to outline a few rules to follow. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. If interpretation is lost, please inform me immediately, and we will ensure interpretation is properly restored before resuming the proceedings. The raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen can be used at any time if you wish to speak or alert the chair. For members participating in person, proceed as you usually would when the whole committee is meeting in person in a committee room. Keep in mind the Board of Internal Economy's guidelines for mask use and health protocols. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you are on the video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Those in the room, your microphone will be controlled as normal by the Proceedings and Verification Officer. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. With regard to a speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do the best we can to maintain consolidated order of speaking for all members, whether they are participating virtually or in person. I would now like to welcome our witnesses. They will be providing us with a presentation to update us on the progress of the Centre Block rehabilitation. Their presentation does go on longer than the usual 5 minutes afforded for an opening statement. I believe that in this instance, that is justified so that we may be fully briefed on the current status of the work. They will be with us for up to 90 minutes. Then, as I indicated, the committee will move in camera to conduct some committee business. Mr. Wright, please proceed with your presentation. Welcome to PROC.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour.
Thank you very much. I'm Rob Wright, Assistant Deputy Minister for Public Service and Procurement Canada. I'm responsible for the restoration and modernization of the parliamentary precinct. Today, I'm accompanied by Jennifer Garrett, Director General, Centre Block Program at BSBC, as well as Michel Patrice, the Deputy Clerk of House of Commons and key partner. And also with us and accompanied by Stéphane Aubé is the Chief Information Officer at the House of Commons, as well as Daryl de Gormont, Director, Centre Block Program at the House of Commons. Today it is our pleasure to present to you an update on the rehabilitation program for Centre Block. Despite the challenges of the pandemic, we have been able to accomplish a lot of progress since our last appearance before you in February of 2020.
Today we'll walk you through the design work, as well as give an update on construction progress. As you are aware, we baselined the project's budget and schedule in June 2021 as part of a public technical briefing. The baseline budget and schedule remains unchanged. The House of Commons will also describe the governance framework that has been established to guide decision-making for the House's functional requirements, as well as provide an overview of some of the key decisions made. Maintenant, je vais passer directement à la présentation. Commençons.
Now I'll move directly to the presentation, beginning with slide 3. It's important to begin by placing Centre Block into its broader context. The project is at the heart of the government efforts to restore and transform the parliamentary precinct and make it a modern and integrated campus. This work has been guided by the long-term planning and vision.
On the twin objectives of supporting the operations of a modern parliamentary democracy and ensuring that Parliament and the parliamentary landscape is open, accessible, and engaging for all Canadians. It is also worth mentioning that in addition to the Centre Block, the other key priority right now is the redevelopment of what we call Block 2, the city block directly across from Parliament Hill. The redevelopment of Block 2 will first serve as swing space to enable us to empty and restore the Confed Building and East Block, and then will enable us to consolidate parliamentary operations into a secure, modern, and integrated campus. We are currently in the second stage of an international design competition. The independent jury, of which 3 parliamentarians are members, will come back together in April to select the winning design concept. I'll now turn my attention directly to the Centre Block. Slide 4 helps to remind us why we are doing the project. While the building may have remained beautiful to look at, its facilities were critically outdated and systems were failing. Stone was damaged by water infiltration and Ottawa's extreme freeze-thaw cycle. Water was also corroding the structural steel. Also, concealed behind the beautiful heritage finishes were kilometers of rusted-out heating pipes which broke and leaked, causing damage. Electrical and communication systems were inadequate and stretched to capacity, trying to support modern broadcasting that it was never designed or equipped to accommodate. Passons à la diapositive suivante. Pour s'assurer...
Let's move on to the next slide. To be sure that Centre Block can serve Canada's parliamentary democracy for the next century and continue to welcome Canadians, profound and considerable restoration was required. It's a heritage restoration job, and this is the largest and most complex such undertaking ever undertaken in Canada. The size and scope of the project are immense. It has been recognized by the Project Management Institute as being a globally influential project. It is a leading project in Canada.
For this heritage masterpiece, it needs to be carefully taken apart, undergo an extensive abatement program, and be literally rebuilt to integrate modern standards, including reinforced structure, seismic upgrading, and new building systems, including mechanical, electrical, and a modern digital backbone and security systems. For example, significant effort is required to transform the Centre Block from one of the government's worst greenhouse gas emitting buildings into a carbon neutral facility that will see a 75% reduction of energy usage and a 50% reduction in water use. Addressing the many accessibility challenges will also require significant effort. Although heritage buildings such as the Centre Block can present some extreme challenges, PSPC, in partnership with Parliament, is committed to making the Centre Block a leading example of accessibility. The addition of a Parliament Welcome Centre is core to achieving this objective, enabling Canada's Parliament to become both more secure as well as more accessible to all Canadians. Passons à la diapositive 7.
Moving on to slide 7. We have to deal with all kinds of technical challenges when we're working on modernizing this masterpiece of heritage so that it can respond to modern codes and standards.
The block only had sprinkler coverage in 20% of the building. It did not have modern heating and cooling, and it only met 30% of the current seismic code. Il est important de reconnaître que
It's important to recognize that while we were developing plans to overcome these challenges and to ensure that Centre Block was going to be in a position to serve Parliament and Canadians for the 21st century and beyond, we were working within a vast network of partners and stakeholders listed here on slide 8. First and foremost, we were in partnership with the two houses of Parliament. I'd like to turn the floor over now to Michel Patrice. Michel? Thank you. Well, as Mr. Wright has said, the complexity of this project is enormous. The project has to meet the needs of parliamentarians, Parliament, the House of Commons, for the next 50 to 100 years. In order to do this, the Board of Internal Economy set up a long-term working group for the long-term vision and plan of this project.
To that group to examine and study and provide timely recommendation to them in respect to renovation and requirements that are integral to the House of Commons, its members, and its operation. Two instructions at that time. It was established in March 2020, and two instructions that was given at that time to the working group was: one, the size of the chamber the footprint of the size of the chamber must remain the same. The second important one, was that the existing heritage of the Centre Block must be protected and maintained, while recognizing that technology and modern equipment was necessary. Members of the working group all parties are represented in that working group, and the chair of that working group is Deputy Speaker d'Entremont. So since the last election, there's been a few adjustment pursuant to the election. So it's a group composed of 8 members of Parliament. It's very important to have this group, as it represents the interest and the knowledge and experience of members of Parliament. Because while a significant historic symbolic place for Canadians, being the seat of democracy, it's also the workplace of parliamentarians. So it must respond to the needs of the future in terms of Parliament as it grows towards the next century. Obviously, the other authority or authorization that the board gave to the working group is to meet jointly with the Senate Long-Term and Vision Plan Subcommittee, which is composed of senators, because Centre Block is one of the buildings that is the most shared between the two houses, and it's important that Parliament responds to the needs of all parliamentarians. The working group has met over 12 times since its creation. A number of decisions and discussions have taken place with the very active membership and involvement of the members of the House of Commons. Some key decisions that were made were obviously the chamber size made by the Board of Internal Economy. The Parliamentary Welcome Centre footprint was the subject of numerous discussions in terms of the needs of Parliament for the future. There were other decisions in respect to the hoarding design in terms of what would be the tarp covering the Parliament during the construction that's going to go for a decade, let's say. Other subject of importance, recognizing the growth, was in terms of lobbies and galleries in the chamber. Lobbies, as you all know, are quite small and are not necessarily comfortable or conducive for members in terms of preparing for the proceedings in the chamber. So one of the decisions that was made was the lobbies in the center block would be on 2 floors. The main lobby on, as you know it, and also a support lobby in the floor below. That would be interconnected, and that would be facilitate movement, but allow you to have meetings and a bit of more freedom to maneuver. Big decision that involved many partners, stakeholders, not only in terms of parliament institution, but also, for example, the National Capital Commission, the City of Ottawa, was the location of the entrance of the Parliamentary Welcome Centre. It had to be intuitive for Canadians and for the public in terms of how do they access their parliament, your parliament. That was a successful, I must say, endeavor, but quite complex. Other items was, for example, a public engagement strategy. They had the PSPC had the support of the working group and the board to do a national survey. This survey, I understand, is has been made public since they've done. Other, recognizing the growth, there was an opportunity, for example, in the center block to infill the Hall of Honor on the top of the Hall of Honor. So the working group made that recommendation to the board, which it approved, and there'll be 3 floors on top of the Hall of Honor. Design, and in terms of its future use, is still under discussion and under review. But there was a consensus between the 2 houses that the top floor, the 6th floor, would be a gathering place for parliamentarians of both houses. There's still a lot to do. Et en termes
In terms of upcoming issues, there are various conversations that have begun, more specifically about the design of the new floors in the Hall of Honor and the spaces above it, as well as the location of the visitor center. The idea being to have a cafe that would be accessible to the public. There are various details about its location and capacity. In terms of the gallery seating, there are various issues that have to be addressed to ensure accessibility of the gallery seating. The working group, as well as the Board of Internal Economy, have recognized that these needs will necessarily reduce the seating capacity of the public gallery. Other issues to explore in the future topics to address are the movement between the various buildings, the tunnels, for example, as well as the design of the parliamentary dining room. This has to be revised, reviewed, and modernized while maintaining its heritage character. Then there are the parliamentary office units in Centre Block. Given the mechanical and infrastructure needs, there's going to necessarily be a reduction in the number of parliamentary offices in Centre Block. These issues will be discussed by the working group. Then there are security issues. Obviously, this is going to be a subject to be dealt with by the working group. As well,
Parliamentary Welcome Centre, the circulation, the Charles Zimmer Room, MP services that will be available in the Parliamentary Welcome Centre are also very important. So I'll pass again the floor to Mr. Wright, but we'll be happy to answer your question, all your questions at the appropriate time.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. The main decisions made by the House of Commons that were just explained to you by Mr. Patrice helped the design to take shape. The design process is a highly collaborative one, and it involves numerous partners other than Parliament. These include the National Capital Commission as well as the Federal Heritage Building Review Office. That's part of Parks Canada.
The design work on perhaps the most important public building in Canada and the complexities involved, PSPC, in partnership with the National Capital Commission and Parliament, engaged the Royal Architectural Institute of Canada to obtain independent feedback on the evolving design. The RAIC brought together a group of eminent Canadian architects and design professionals, as well as a former architect of the Capitol in Washington, to form an independent design review panel shown on slide 15 to provide feedback on the design direction. The design that I will walk you through today continues to be shaped through this engagement, and it is helping us to find a point of balance between restoring this heritage masterpiece and modernizing it to support the 21st century Parliament and making it more open and accessible for all Canadians. Le premier point à souligner est
The main point I'd like to emphasize is that the guiding principle of this design is that the new Parliament Welcome Centre and the renewed centre block have to respect what has come before. As you can see here on slide 17, the parliamentary lawn has been completely restored and that sight lines of centre block have been respected. At the foot of the Centennial Flames, the Houses of Parliament and Parliament Hill will resemble what it has been when Centre Block was first closed down. The traditional functioning of Parliament Hill will also be respected, and traditional pathways and circulation routes will be conserved.
Continue to pass by the Centennial Flame as they move up the central path towards a new, fully accessible front door to Parliament. As well, it is important to note that parliamentarians and visiting dignitaries will still be able to enter the centre block through the traditional entryways. As a visitor moves up the central pathway, the universally accessible front door comes into focus. The goal is for the entry to be subtle, but also for it to work intuitively for Canadians visiting Parliament Hill. The Vaux wall and the central staircase will be returned to their former positions, and the entry will be integrated under the central staircase, with access from both the east and west. Lorsqu'un visiteur entre dans le centre de...
When a visitor enters the Parliament Welcome Centre, as you can see on slide 18, the visitor will first go through a mezzanine. This is a secure zone, but it also feels open, and a visitor can very quickly see the configuration of the space and its function.
The central feature in the space is also immediately evident, the now exposed foundation of the Peace Tower and Confederation Hall, which both anchors the space and connects it to the centre block. Des escaliers,
Staircases and elevators will be available on either side to bring visitors into the main public entrance, the Welcome Centre.
Visitors will then pass through airport-style security screening, with a bypass lane for parliamentarians, dedicated lanes for business visitors, while the majority of the lanes will be used by the Canadian public and visiting school groups. Once a visitor enters the main welcome hall, shown here on slide 19, there will be dedicated spaces for visitor engagement, exhibition space and an interactive theatre, as well as classrooms for school groups, which will be available for use by parliamentarians to engage schools, constituents, and other groups. Visitors will flow around the foundation of the Peace Tower as they move towards the centre block. 2 sets of skylights will fill the space with natural light and connect it to 2 of the centre block's most iconic elements, the Peace Tower and the Hall of Honour. Previously only visible from outside the building, there will now be several vistas of the centre block's defining feature, the Peace Tower. The point of interface between the Parliament Welcome Centre and the centre block will be the east and west courtyards. A visitor on a public tour will enter through the west courtyard adjacent to the House Chamber and exit through the east courtyard adjacent to the Senate Chamber. As visitors take elevators up into the previously unused courtyards, they will ascend into new light-filled spaces seen here on slide 20. The use of the courtyards will have multiple benefits. making the center block more energy efficient and much more accessible. Leveraging the courtyards is critical to ensuring that the center block can continue to operate both as the Parliament building and as a public building, open and accessible to all Canadians. Les visiteurs en visite guidée.
Visitors on guided tours or watching a committee meeting or conducting other activities will leave the courtyard through the southern corridor.
Visiteurs qui assisteront.
Visitors watching question period or a vote will go up the stairs or the elevator to the floor above to reach the mezzanine adjacent to the gallery.
Visitors move towards the gallery, they will pass through an antechamber that will act as a sound trap to ensure that activity in the courtyard will not disturb chamber proceedings. As a visitor enters into the new code-compliant and universally accessible gallery, shown here on slide 21, the chamber will look as it always did. The heritage elements will be fully restored, but with fully integrated modern infrastructure to meet broadcasting and acoustic standards. As Monsieur Patrice a dit, seating design in both the gallery and on the chamber floor are areas that we continue to work hand in hand with the House of Commons to ensure that we're able to align the functional needs of Parliament and the objectives of universal accessibility. Specifically, we are working to maintain as many seats as possible in the gallery and to provide additional seats on the chamber floor to accommodate the increasing numbers of MPs over time. Further consultation with parliamentarians, including mock-ups, will be part of the process to further develop the seating plans for the chamber. Au cours des diapositives 23,
Slides 23 to 25 will be used to update you on the heritage conservation and the progress in construction.
many of the over 20,000 heritage assets in the center block have been removed for repair and restoration. Internationally recognized best practices for conservation are being followed, both to protect existing heritage elements and in designing new features that serve modern functions. Following the careful removal of the heritage layer, much of the building has now been taken down to the studs, and the removal of asbestos is 65% completed. Approximately 16 million pounds of asbestos-containing material have now been removed. The painstaking work will be completed on floors 1, 4, 5, and 6 before the end of 2022, while work on the high heritage floors 2 and 3, including the chambers, will extend into 2023. Au cours des diapositives suivantes,
The next slides illustrate before and after images demonstrating the progress inside the building to prepare it for the next phase of work. The next phase involves strengthening the building structure, meeting modern codes, and installing new systems.
The image on slide 26 is of the chamber after the hand-painted linen ceiling was carefully removed for important conservation work. The second image on slide 27 shows the former fifth floor cafeteria. La diapositive.
Slide 28 shows you the progress where public visitors were entering the building in level 1. And the next slide shows the 6th floor.
On slide 30 shows the reading room, which is now being used for rapid testing of all the workers, which has been a key part of a comprehensive strategy with great leadership demonstrated by the construction industry to keep the site safe and operational over the past 2 years. Slide 31 shows the masonry work progressing well on the north facade. 25% of the north facade is now completed, which represents about 5% of the overall masonry work. This will involve the complete rehabilitation of the almost 400,000 stones on the building's exterior, requiring the complete removal and repair, and in some cases replacement of approximately 1/3 of the stones. This work is extremely labor-intensive and time-consuming. Les travaux d'excavation de centre.
Excavation work for the Parliament Welcome Centre, as you see here on slide 32, are on track and progressing well. The excavation work is 60% complete, with approximately 26,000 truckloads of rocky substrate having been removed to date. The west part of the excavation has reached its final depth of 21 meters. The excavation work will be completed at the end of this year.
Shifting to slide 33, I will now look forward to some key upcoming milestones and activities. A key focus this spring will be to finalize the schematic design and then seek design endorsement in the form of a federal land use approval from the National Capital Commission. Turning to construction, we will begin the removal of the floor slab in level 1 and begin excavation work in the basement and the courtyards. This technically challenging work is key to both advancing the base isolation strategy for seismic upgrading, as well as for interconnecting the center block and the Parliament Welcome Center. En 2023, les principaux...
In 2023, the main excavation work of the Parliamentary Welcome Center will be behind us, and we will be also completing the demolition work as well as the abatement inside the center block building. By the end of 2023, after creating a series of geothermal wells, we will begin to pour concrete for the Parliament Welcome Center.
The restoration and modernization of the center block and the insertion of a new Parliament Welcome Center into the heritage landscape is complex and challenging. But at the same time, it provides a number of opportunities to not only restore this Canadian masterpiece, but also to digitally equip Canada's Parliament and to make it more secure, sustainable, and accessible to all Canadians, enabling more Canadians to engage in our country's parliamentary tradition and democratic process. This work will ensure the Parliament building is ready to serve Parliament and Canada for another century. Thank you for your attention. We'd be pleased to take your questions.
Well, thank you for that thorough presentation, and thank you and your team for being here with us today. We will now enter into 6-minute round for questions, starting with Mr. Duncan, followed by Mr. Turnbull, et puis Madame de Belleville, followed by Ms. Blaney. Mr. Duncan, to you for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning. So thank you for the information. I've got a few different things, and I think I'll go over some of the questions I have about project benchmarks and then some of the governance. And having been a member of PROC before, you won't be surprised by some of my questions on that. And then talking a little about the contingencies or variables. So good information and good presentation, but a couple of things. When are we going to get back into center block? We talk about the time frame, on time, on budget. What is on time?
I know it will be difficult as I'm
Madam
not
Chair.
in the room, but I'll just remind us to go to the chair. If we do maintain a good pace, I will not intervene as often. Mr. Wright.
I was asking you, Madam Chair, but anyway, I know. Noted.
Thank you very much for the question, Madam Chair. So in June 2021, when we baselined the project as part of the public technical briefing, we stated that the substantial completion of construction would be complete, and we gave a range in 2030/2031, and I'll come back for the rationale for that. And then also working hand in hand with Parliament, the House of Commons and the Senate. We also indicated that there'd be an approximate 1-year period of commissioning, testing, so to ensure that the center block is ready for use as part of for parliamentary proceedings. So that baseline remains. So we continue with a construction schedule of 2030/2031, and then a period of time for Parliament to be able to properly commission the building. So
Just in the which is good. So I think it would say about a decade left before we may get in between finishing at that point. The other thing is we got to ask about money. I ask about that every time. where are we at in terms of a budget? I'll start with center block and I'll expand a little bit, but what's the budget figure as of today for the cost of the center block renovations?
Right. Again, returning to the baseline that we established in June 2021, we established a baseline budget for the center block and the Parliament Welcome Centre, and again, we gave a range of $4.5 to $5 billion. So that is the established budget for both the center block and the Parliament Welcome Centre.
And that's just the center block building itself. So pulling it back out into the presentation about the parliamentary precinct, two questions on that when it comes to budget and time frame. What's the overall number that you have at this point for all those blocks and buildings, Confederation East? What's the total number you're looking at as of today?
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much for the question, Madam Chair. It's important to maybe take one step back. The long-term vision and plan we implement on rolling programs of work. And so essentially what we do is, and again, kind of take you back to that baselining in June of 2021. So there's a lot of work that we do with Parliament to develop the functional requirements for individual projects, and then we baseline both the budget and the schedule for each one of these. The next big piece to baseline will be Block 2. So once we're kind of come out of that international design competition, we would then move to baseline that from a budget and schedule perspective, and then hold ourselves accountable for the delivery of that. We just completed a major recapitalization of the East Block. We hit that on time, on budget, which just under $100 million. So we have a good record of hitting our baseline budget and schedule, but we don't have an overall estimate for all of the work because the priorities and the sequencing are subject to adjustment.
As willing to share with us, in the interest of time, be sharing with the committee perhaps in writing about which buildings you do have estimates on and which ones are to come, perhaps? Do we know at this point?
Sure thing.
Okay. And then the other thing is the timeline to that of where people look at center block, and we get the briefing today as part of that, but would it be fair to say that the parliamentary precinct is going to be under construction? I'm going to guess, I'll start with next 20 years?
Well, thank you for the question, Madam Chair. So I would say we are really in about mid-stride of the overall restoration and modernization of the parliamentary precinct. There's a lot of projects behind us. We've completed 25 very large projects, but you're exactly right. There's a lot ahead of us. So right now with the center block and the Parliament Welcome Centre, and then moving into Block 2, there's also Block 1, the Confed and East Block. So we would really be starting to bring things together in a consolidated precinct with most of the work behind us in the mid-2030s.
Okay. Switching.
45 seconds, Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll get to this. The Auditor General, for an example, for the magnitude of this, and perhaps over this, the work around center block and the precinct has been in discussion. I say 20 years old in terms of planning. Going back to Speaker Milliken, I think was some of the first times this is discussed. Has the Auditor General ever done any reports or findings in the tenure of the 20 years? And if so, when was the last time?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Madam Chair. So the last time that the Auditor General issued a report on the long-term vision and plan and the work was in 2010.
So at that time, and again, I'll go back of where maybe my last question, Madam Chair, through you, is where we originally started in terms of timelines and budgets, I think has grown and stretched from a budget and timeline perspective. Has the Auditor General expressed anything in terms of looking at this again? And I'll say both because my time is up, and I think perhaps some other colleagues that get this, of looking at the governance aspect as well. Have there been any concerns raised in that or changes made since the last AG report?
Yeah, thank you. So the last Auditor General report in 2010, to kind of boil things down, and again, sorry for not going through the chair. Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. There were essentially clean bill of health given on project management and the delivery of the projects, and finding on the governance was essentially issued as part of that report in 2010, and a recommendation at that point in 2010 was to transfer the accountabilities of the work from the executive branch to Parliament.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. We'll now be moving on to Mr. Turnbull for 6 minutes. I'm going to ask, just for us maximizing our time, that after a person finishes speaking, that we take a breath before the next person goes, because this is not an interrogation, it's just a questioning, and we're here to find some information and to respect the interpreters. So unless I feel the pace is getting too quick, I will let the conversation continue to flow through the chair.
I only
but
had 6 minutes. I apologize. Only got through a third of my questions.
I'm not just talking to you, Mr. Duncan, but if you feel that I am, I'll leave that with you. I just want to try to run a meeting as thorough as possible and to ensure that we get as much information as possible. So with that, Mr. Turnbull, to you for 6 minutes, and go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks to the panelists through you for the incredible presentation and updates. I had the opportunity of sitting on the working group in the last session of Parliament, and I grew to appreciate the size and complexity of this project and the incredible work that's being done, both to preserve the heritage features, to ensure a really great, design that's going to meet the needs of parliamentarians and senators for many years to come. So incredible work. Just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. First off, have a few questions. One of the questions that I think is, important to me, I think it's important to Canadians, is about getting to net zero. Our government obviously has very big commitments around this that we're making lots of progress on. Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Wright, perhaps. I know he mentioned in his remarks 75% reduction in energy usage and 50% in water usage, if I heard that correctly. Just wondering if he could give us a little bit more detail on how that will be achieved and whether that's mostly through mechanical system upgrades or whether it's through a combination of factors. I'll leave it to him to respond.
Thank you very much for the question, Madam Chair, and I will ask Ms. Garrett to add in some details on this. But you're exactly right. The replacement of the mechanical systems are a key part of making this building much more energy efficient. The closure of the courtyards also play a part in that, in removing a significant portion of the building from the exterior elements. We're also doing research with the NRC on how to effectively insulate these types of heritage buildings, which is very complex. One of the areas that will make a big difference is putting insulation in the roof line, which did not have insulation before. But I'll pass it over to Ms. Garrett to add some more detail.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'll add just to what Mr. Wright has said. Think about the standard things that you'd like to do in your house. Replace the windows, add insulation. We're doing all of those things in addition to the systems that Mr. Wright's putting in place. Also key to achieving the strategy, and it is a very robust strategy that goes from everything from plantings to the mechanical systems, but I think it's worthy to highlight that we are putting a small geothermal field underneath the Parliament Welcome Centre, and key to that will allow us to exchange heat and cooling amongst the triad for the buildings. There's also a very significant water retention strategy that is going to be a key contributor to the program. So between building systems, the normal kinds of things that you do in your home, the geothermal field and heat exchange, we are going to go a very, very long way to be achieving carbon neutral. We get very much all the way there just as a program. And then on top of it, we're going to be buying clean energy off of the grid. So the grid is cleaning itself up as well. And that's the last little part that gets us there. So happy to provide any further details, but cognizant of time, that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, to the panelists for that response. That was great, and very happy to hear that geothermal is being considered and in fact used. One other question that I had was you mentioned that the working group was going to be discussing numerous topics to come. One of them was security issues, obviously with things we've seen in the last week or so on Parliament Hill occurring, and some certainly undertones of anti-government sentiment. I think all of the MPs are certainly in our caucus concerned about security. Wondered if there were new security, concerns or considerations that would come up for that working group, and if you could give us some idea of what those might look like.
Well, when speaking about security, I will remain very general, Madam Chair, but let's just say that we are observing and we're learning from every situation that is occurring and adapting in terms of plan and what's going to be discussed in camera in relation to security. One good example in terms of learning lessons, and Mr. Wright alluded to it, is in terms of the operationalization of the building that is needed after construction is completed. We've learned quite a bit in terms of the move when we close down Center Block to go into the West Block. It's very important, and for us as the House administration and for you as parliamentarian, continuity of Parliament is a key feature, and it must be always our first priority. So we learn every time, we adapt, and we try to do better each time. So a good example would have been the transfer from the Center Block to the West Block. So we'll apply those same principle when it comes to security.
30 seconds, Mr. Turnbull.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So through you, just wondered, so another train of thought, but the independent design review panel is just incredible in terms of their expertise that they bring to this project. Could maybe members of the panel just speak to any impacts that they've had so far on the design moving forward? It seems that having that group, doing that independent review is a really positive thing for us to have. So could you speak to just the impact that they've had so far?
Thank you very much for the question, Madam Chair. I'll maybe highlight three areas where they've had a significant impact, and I think it's also important to note that their focus has really been in the public components of the building, not really focusing on the kind of the core parliamentary aspects of the building. So the interface between the Great Lawn, the Parliament Welcome Centre, and into Centre Block, they've had quite a significant impact on how the Parliament Welcome Centre is essentially acting as a bridge to kind of connect the public environment of the lawn into the Parliament Welcome Centre and then into the Centre Block. And I think that we found with their help a good balance point between the public and the parliamentary side of the building so that can work. So that central entry is Mr. Patrice underlined. There was a lot of hard work to get that in the position that it is today, and I think we're on a very solid foundation. The kind of the.
Donc, je vais juste interrompre.
I'm going to interrupt you. I know that we could continue this conversation later on. I think that this was a good pace, and I hope that the interpreters have been able to agree with me on this one. But now, 6 minutes. The floor is Madame de Bellefeuille's. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would agree with my colleagues in congratulating you for the quality of your presentation this morning. I think it's a clear summary of the major stages of this big project. My question, Madam Chair, is this. What I've been able to understand is that the House of Commons per se is not going to be any bigger. But is it possible to have 420 seats? Is that still the idea? That's my first question. Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. I'll ask Mr. Patrice to add to my answer in terms of more clarifications. But of course, we are looking at creating plans so that we can add seats to the House. The idea being that the number of members of Parliament can function in this important space. But I'd like to turn the floor over to Mr. Patrice to elaborate. Thank you very much. The increase in numbers of MPs is a reality, and it's a good reality for our democratic system. We are aware of this increase over the next 100 years, so various scenarios and plans have been examined. Perhaps to give a bit of perspective, I would ask Mr. de Gramont, who's the House architect, to elaborate on the various options that are under review, given that we are aware of the fact that there will be an increase in the number of members of Parliament. Thank you. We have looked at scenarios to accommodate the growth, as has already been mentioned. Today, we have a scenario with the existing furniture in the house. There's also a possibility of reusing this. The scenarios are moving increasingly in terms of the reuse of heritage furnitures, and as well as the integration of other furnishing scenarios, which perhaps could be for the rows that are further back. There's also a possibility of redoing the whole layout or re-examining the whole layout to see whether we can increase numbers with new furniture. We have not yet arrived at a specific preference. We do know, however, that there are scenarios required to accommodate this growth over the years. There won't necessarily just be one option. We will be working on looking at an increase over time, and that could include the scenario of heritage furniture. And I hope that there is interest in maintaining that, so we're working hard to be able to do so. Thank you very much. Through the chair, my question is for Mr. Aubé. I'm rather curious to know, given the experience of the pandemic, lots of adaptation was required given the technological challenges. We know that committee meetings is going to be limited because of our various technological limitations and our physical infrastructure limitations in terms of rooms. In the future Parliament, what about interpreters? What about the space for interpreters, booths, the number of rooms, the technological equipment to make sure that we could maybe we can go through another hybrid situation, but we won't feel that we're going to be held back by technology or the availability of rooms. Has this current experience influenced the development of IT for the future Parliament? Thank you for the question, Madame de Bellefeuille. Through the chair, Madame Bellefeuille, as you know, and as Michel has said, continuity of business of the House is an extremely important priority in parliamentary operations. And so every infrastructure implementation in the building is going to ensure the ability to continue to function in the event of any other pandemics or incidents which would require different ways of working. There are many challenges within the House, as you know, Madame de Bellefeuille. There will be less space in the building than there had been before. So we're looking at various strategies to ensure that we have the same level of service, but perhaps differently. We have pilot projects where we're examining remote work and operating some of the services remotely. But we want to ensure that the level of service currently being offered will remain the same. We will also have to respect the rules and procedures that you're going to establish in this committee and the choices that you are going to make in terms of the way in which you wish to operate. At the technology side, we will ensure that the technology is in place to support you in the way that you want to work in the future. 40 seconds. Last question. Through the chair, I'm rather curious to know whether in your process, I mean, we are a modern organization. I imagine that you will be able to confirm to me that your process involves consulting the users, including the interpreters, and that they are actively participating in the development of the infrastructure, and that's to be sure that they can provide high-quality interpretation in both official languages. I can guarantee you through the chair, I can guarantee you, Madame de Bellefeuille, that the interpreters are integral partners in any solutions development. When we conduct pilot projects, for example, within this initiative, we have pilot projects to examine various ways of providing interpreting services. The Translation Bureau and Interpretation Office is in partnership with us, and we will be in partnership with them for any final solution to be sure that your needs are being met by the service offering. Thank you. Thank you, Madame de Bellefeuille, for your presence here at the committee today. And now for 6 minutes, the floor goes to Madame Glaney.
Well, thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. And I'd like to thank everyone here presenting to us. That was very informative. And I appreciate you summing up in such a short time, such an enormous project. I have a few questions. One of them was mentioned several times was about accessibility. And I guess I would just like a little bit of clarity about what that looks like, not only for visitors, which is incredibly important, but also for MPs. This is something that I'm personally really passionate about, because when spaces are accessible, we see more faces around the table that we may not see traditionally. So I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about sort of focusing on how are we making this more accessible for MPs. You spoke about having 2 floors for the lobbies. I think it's something to think about very carefully, that we don't send, people who have a disability somewhere else to get to the same place as everyone else. And I also think of walking into the MP's door in Centre Block, and there's the stairs that you go up, and I really enjoy that experience, but I also think it's important that we look at that in terms of accessibility. So if you could just clarify for me just about how are we making these spaces more accessible for MPs to be able to do their work regardless of their ability.
Thank you very much for the question, Madam Chair, and I'll ask Ms. Garrett to add details again, just at a high level to begin with. So we're working closely with an accessibility advisory group on the designs, and I can come back to the kind of the public experience, but the question was mostly around parliamentarians. One important element is that with the Parliament Welcome Centre, the Centre Block, West Block, and East Block will be interconnected with essentially a parliamentary promenade, which will really shift these 3 buildings to become one integrated complex with a universal accessible pathway interconnecting the 3 buildings. Universal accessibility from the exterior, a key part of this as well, and really trying to ensure that the pathways are the same pathways for all people, and that the same means of moving throughout the building is the same for all people. So there's been a tremendous amount of study around the placement of elevators, for example, the sizing of elevators to ensure that it's a very inclusive experience, as well as the placement and sizing and approach with washroom facilities as well. So it's a very inclusive approach beyond pure just mobility issues, but I'll pass it over to Ms. Garrett to add details.
I don't want to interrupt, but through you, Madam Chair, just really important for me to understand that the lobbies. So you're going to have the lobbies on 2 floors, and that's integral to our work. I just want to say that in the current space that we're in the West Block, there's stairs to go up if you want to go in the back way, and so it concerns me a little bit. So that's another component.
I'll start with that and broaden out. Okay, so there has been a lot of focused work done, and there will be a lot of discussion, I think, upcoming with the House of Commons working group on this very subject, given the importance of accessibility to the program. And when I talk about accessibility at this point in the schematic design process, we're really focused on mobility, but it really is going to be an inclusive approach that will continue to evolve. But we want to make sure, first and foremost, the building doesn't get designed in a way that it gets in the way. So there will have to be modifications for the chamber, for seating, to make sure that we have dignified, inclusive seating, and that people can maneuver within the chamber itself to front to back. In terms of the lobbies, the access that you from the lobby into the chamber is a key area of interest and study for us on the project to date, and there will be consultations with the working group coming up on that, but there are solutions to get mobility challenged people from the lobby that existed now into the chamber. And in terms of the extension into that 2-level lobby, there will absolutely not only be stairs but elevators within that lobby environment that connect the lobby together. Sort of that lower level where you have your food services where you can meet with somebody, connect up through an elevator or a staircase should you choose to the main traditional lobby, which will function as it always has with the whips and accessible access into the chamber. I don't want to drive your time down. Is that what you're looking for? Would you like me to continue to broaden?
And I guess another question I have is...
Sorry, I'm just going to just step in 1 minute left for you, Ms. Blaney.
Thank you. I guess my other question is, and it's already been brought up, is the current seating arrangement for members within the House of Commons, if the chamber is going to stay the same. And of course, as we went through that transition of having more members in the House in 2015, there was those sort of bucket seats. And again, this is another challenge for many reasons to have people moving in and out. So I'm just wondering, are you looking at that when you do it, making sure that people have their own seats, or is there sort of discussions about having more of those seats? Yeah.
Madam Chair, the seating arrangement obviously will be a subject of, I'm sure, of many discussion with the working group. Obviously, we have to look to the future. You're right in terms of benches that that we put to complement the increase of members in the center block chamber was not the most liked addition. So those discussions will be engaged with the members of the working group, and obviously your representative, I'm sure, will consult more broadly in terms of the seating arrangement. So, for example, desk. We can anticipate that somewhere in that life of that new renovated building, because of growth, maybe there'll be less room for desk. So there's going to be many discussion and hopefully a vision for the future through the dialogue with and decision of the working group, dialogue with the members of their own parties, and ultimately the recommendation of the board.
Excellent. That brings us to time. I'm just going to propose, because I know things are taking a little bit longer, that we will get through round 2 of questioning. I do find this to be a very productive conversation. So if we would like to try to get through our 3rd round so most members would be able to do their questions, would we like to ask witnesses to stay till 1 p.m. so we can get through the 3 rounds? Is there a desire for committee members? Anyone opposed? Okay, so that would probably take our committee business away from today, but we can do it on Thursday. And just a notice to the witnesses that we would be asking you to stay till 1 so that we can get through this conversation and receive this information. On to round 2, we will be starting with Mr. Calkins, followed by Ms. Sahota for 5 minutes. Et puis Madame de Bellefeuille et Madame Blaney pour 2 minutes et demie. And then Mr. Viss, followed by Mr. Greg Burgess for 5 minutes. Mr. Calkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the folks here today, thank you so much for taking your time. I've never had an opportunity to actually ask any questions about this. I'm just celebrated my 16th anniversary as a member of Parliament a few days ago, and happy to ask a few questions here. I'm hoping my career is long enough that I'll see my way back to center block. When did the rehab work? When did the shovels first hit the ground? Can we have can you remind me of the date that that actually happened?
Thank you very much for the question, Madam Chair. So, if you remember back, the transition of Parliament happened in early 2019. With the start of proceedings in the West Block. That the first year, 2019, was very much mostly consumed with setting up the construction site and separating the facility from the kind of the parliamentary grid. So the real shovels in the ground to get to the bottom line really started in 2020.
2020, okay. I didn't see in any of the presentation a PERT chart, a Gantt chart, any elevations, and it seems to me from the discussions that we're having here that we started a reconstruction process without actually knowing what the final project will look like. Am I missing something?
Thank you very much for the question. So this is a traditional approach that we've used on Parliament Hill. And really it's a construction management based approach. So we've brought on the design team and the construction management team at the same time. The key thing here with the center block as well as the other buildings within the precinct, there's a tremendous amount of heavy lift at the front end that is not really dependent on the design. So, for example, taking all the asbestos out of the building, which is a couple of years of work, and doing all of the excavation work, for example, for the Parliament Welcome Centre. Once we lock down the size of the Parliament Welcome Centre, we're able to get going on that and taking all of the asbestos out of the building.
Yep.
So getting that done. So we try and do things in parallel rather than in series. Wait to get all the design locked down and then begin the construction.
Yet we still have a estimated completion date and we have a budget, but we don't know yet what size, what percentage of the budget is contingencies. Like what are we looking at? Are we looking at 50% contingencies, 100% contingencies? I look around at some of the other procurement projects that the government has, and I'm seeing things cost 4 times more than they did 10 years ago. So what's in place to make sure that this doesn't end up being something that costs 4 times more in hindsight than what we planned a few years ago?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Madam Chair. So when we baselined the project in June 2021, we had an independent costing firm do work with us to establish a baseline cost estimate. And so all of the contingencies, risk reserve, escalation were factored into the cost breakdown. So if we look at contingencies, we have design contingency as well as construction contingency. And it maps out well compared to, given the complexity and the scale of the center block, compared to other projects in the precinct. For example, the West Block had contingencies of 35%. We're using 45% for the center block, given the increased complexity with all of the additional heritage material in particular. For the risk reserve, for example, we use 25% risk reserve on the West Block. We're using a range of 15% to 35%, and this gives you that's how we get to that range of $4.5 to $5 billion. It's that range in the risk reserve. And the reason that we've used a range in this case were 2 factors. One is that we still did not have all of the functional requirements locked down with Parliament. And given the pandemic context of escalation rates in materials, equipment, and the rates of labor, we wanted to make sure that we had some additional absorption to be able to take into account the potential that escalation rates would take a while to return back to normal.
20 seconds to Mr. Calkins.
Thank you. Just one concern about the notion of a public cafeteria. This government, any government, would collect taxes from the restaurants on Spark Street. I don't understand where the idea or notion came from that we would take those tax dollars from those restaurants and build a competing facility across the street on in Center Block. Unless there's something I don't understand about, is it going to be provided by a private contractor, or are we actually now in the business of competing with local restaurants?
I'm going to just end the time there, and perhaps we can get an answer to that at a later time. 5 minutes to Ms. Sahota.
Great.
Thank you, Madam Chair. little confused by that last question. But anyways, I did appreciate having a cafeteria access when I was in Center Block. And I'm sure that the new plans will be great. I wanted to just commend all the witnesses for being really professional. And I can tell from the meeting we had in 2020 to now, things have really come along, and there's a lot more details being provided in this plan than at that time. So it's wonderful to get this update. I wanted to know, it was mentioned that it was decided by the LTV group or the working group that the committee rooms would remain we would remain with 2 large committee rooms. What went into deciding that? Because I believe in Center Block previous, we did have one on the Senate side as well, and made use of a room in the lower floor as a committee room as well. So, what were the factors that came to that conclusion?
Thank you for the question. It's I'll start and then turn to Mr. Obey to give more details. We're talking here about committee room for the use of the House of Commons. So it's a review of the committee rooms for the House of Commons, and it's taking into account of our full basket of committee rooms in the different facilities across the House of Commons precinct. So maybe Mr. Obey can be more specific about the committee rooms in the center block.
Thank you, Mr. Fates. Through you, Madam Chair. As you remember, in the center block, we had 3 committee rooms. There was 237, 253, and there was 112 down in the basement. But 112 wasn't really functioning as a committee room. So our requirements basically remains the same for the center block facilities. As you know, through the implementation of Wellington, we did increase the number of committee rooms that we've had. But the main reasons to why our requirements have stayed the same is that it's basically based on consultation and the statistics of the number of meetings that we have. We see an increase of number of events, so we have sufficient rooms and facilities to do so. And we feel that if ever there is a requirement, we can leverage other facilities, because as we are interconnecting all these facilities, we'll be able to leverage. One of them that we have to think about is once we'll renovate Center Block, we'll go back to West Block. And as you remember, the original plans for the West Block chamber was to transform that chamber potentially into future committee rooms. So if ever there is a need in that complex to increase the committee rooms in the future, we do have that capability. But all of that, again, will be determined through consultation with members once we get to the West Block to determine what we're going to be doing with these spaces. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Obey. And through you, Madam Chair, I'd also like to know, in terms of just a little bit of what you're hinting on, there have been continuing discussions on transforming the block across from Center Block as well in the future. Can you share a little bit more as to what the status is on that part of the project?
Thank you very much for the question, Madam Chair. So, yeah, the redevelopment of Block 2 directly across from the Peace Tower is really going to be a really important step for the parliamentary precinct. It kind of finishes off the kind of the parliamentary square, if you will. So but it's really will help us to empty for the House of Commons the Confed building, which is critically important as it houses a great number of members of Parliament. It's also critically important for the Senate. It will allow us to empty the East Block so that we can fully restore and modernize those 2 really important buildings. Once the Confed and the East Block are finished, we're then able to start to reconsolidate the parliamentary precinct into an integrated campus. And Mr. Patrice mentioned, key elements such as tunnel connections to create an integrated campus for the secure and efficient movement of accredited people, as well as material and goods to be able to move between the facilities as well. So that the vision here is an integrated campus of the Hill and the 3 city blocks facing. So we're in the second stage of international design competition. Submissions are going to be received in early March, the final submissions. The jury will come, independent jury will come back together, of which there's 3 parliamentarians sitting on that jury, to render a decision on the winning concept, and then that project will really launch.
That brings us to time. I hope that's okay, Ms. Sahota. And now we will go to 2 minutes et demi pour Madame de Bellefeuille.
2.5 minutes. Thank you very much, Chair. We've seen in recent years major buildings, new buildings built without taking into consideration accessibility standards for people with reduced mobility. We're talking about push buttons that were placed too high to be able to access the elevators so that you couldn't reach them if you were sitting in a wheelchair. Or what about the height of drinking fountains, or how wide are the doorways? So new construction today makes it possible for somebody with limited mobility to move around, and this should be the case in public spaces as well as in the House of Commons, whether they're in any situation of limited mobility or in a wheelchair. Have you ensured that from the beginning to the end of this project, this indicator and this value is very important, to be sure that you respect it? Thank you for the question. Madam Chair, accessibility is at the very heart of this program, and it's a program to restore and modernize the facilities. We are working with a group of experts in accessibility. It is a key component of the design for Centre Block and also for the Parliament Welcome Centre, as well as for other projects which will be coming in the future, such as for number 2 that we discussed a few minutes ago for Block 2. I could ask Ms. Garrett to add elements, but I can assure you that accessibility is at the very heart of this project. Madam Chair, do I have any time left? Yes. 1 minute. My last question is this. You know that at least we hope that in 10 years, women will make up 50% of MPs. Today, male or female, one wishes to assume their role as parents. So have you planned for any family spaces, diaper changing tables in all bathrooms, so that elected members and the members of the public can come to Parliament with their young children, so as to be able to provide all necessary support to MPs to be able to exercise their parliamentary functions while ensuring the work-life balance? Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. Yes, we have provided for family spaces. There's a family room that's going to exist in Centre Block. We are consulting MPs on the subject to have a better idea of the needs in Centre Block. We've talked about ante-rooms and lobbies that are 2 floors. We're seeing not only a growth in the number of MPs, but we know that there are family needs that are in Centre Block as well. So this is part of what we are currently discussing. There are some rooms that have already been planned. Thank you. And now we'll be continuing with our deliberations. 2.5 minutes for Ms. Blaney.
Well, thank you, Chair. And I guess my question through you, Madam Chair, is around workers. I see that you've got something in here talking about how many jobs have been created, and I really appreciate that. But I also heard a lot from the presentation that talked about specialized skills and all of the different things. So I'm curious about how it's going. Are you having any challenges around hiring people that have those specialized skills? And the other part of that question is there any information that lets us know about the diversity of the workforce? Is there any sort of investment in making sure that we're opening up opportunities to diverse populations, to women and so forth? And is that represented anywhere in your information?
Thank you very much for the question. And again, I'll ask Ms. Garrett to add some details. But on the as far as capacity at this point in the industry, given the stage that we're at in the project, which is really around the demolition and abatement work, as well as the excavation work, we've not seen any real issues with capacity, but it is a concern. There's no question about that. We've had a lot of engagement with the Canadian Construction Association around capacity, as well as working very closely with our partners on the construction side. There is anticipated, if you look 10 years out, there's anticipated retirements in the construction industry that we're working closely with the industry to try and ensure that capacity is provided as we look forward. So far, so good is what I would say, but there's work to be done there. On the diversity side of things, spending a lot of work and effort, and I would say, some real kudos to the construction industry. Our partners, PCL and Ellis Don have done. They've really been partners on working to try and build capacity and broaden opportunities. When we're talking about with whether that's to Indigenous communities or to other underrepresented groups such as females and others. And we do have a good track record. On the West Block, we had the biggest apprenticeship program for females in masonry in North America. So we have done some good things in the past, and we continue to focus on it, but it won't happen on its own.
Thank you.
Ms. Blaney, that brings you to time, but you do have 5 seconds if you'd like it.
I'm good, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And now we'll go for 5 minutes to Mr. Viss.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. It's really nice to be here with all of you today and for the presentation. I have a couple of really quick questions. We got 5 minutes, so I'm going to move quickly. How many contractors are part of the parliamentary precinct rebuild?
I'm going to pause the clock
Through
for
you,
a
Madam
second.
Chair.
Yes, I'm going to pause the clock for a second because I do know this line of questioning. So just for the witnesses, usually the time period that a member uses for a question is the time that is given to you for an answer. So just to respect and keep a breath between speakers for interpreters, I would just ask witnesses to be mindful. And Mr. Viss, it's great to see you too. And maybe we can give them double the time because they don't do QP like we do.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll slow down my line of questioning. Can we restart?
Yes, let's do that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, a real pleasure to see all of you here today. How many contractors are involved in the rebuild of the parliamentary precinct?
Thank you very much for the question, Madam Chair. It would be very difficult today to give you an exact number of all the contractors across the whole precinct. And there's two really important things. One is that the nature, the size and scale of this work is on the very, very big projects. We work with some very big firms, and then there's a web of some subcontracts. So if you look at the center block, for example, we have PCL Ellis Don as a joint venture for construction management, but there's over 500 companies that have contracts on and that expands from coast to coast. So it's a very large economic footprint with a lot of opportunities for companies to get involved.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Okay.
The second question I have, given that there hasn't been a report done by the Auditor General since 2010, and we're talking about a very large sum of public money. Can you explain to this committee what processes are in place to ensure that contracts are meeting their obligations? And when they're not, what processes are taken to ensure that they're no longer accessing these lucrative and very valuable government contracts?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Madam Chair. And so we do have a quite robust project management regime, and with a lot of details, and I'll ask Ms. Garrett to add some, but really important is that we've had a number of firms over the past decade since that last Auditor General report to come in and do open book accounting audits. So PricewaterhouseCoopers has come in. We've had others come in and do audits of the projects, West Block, Sir John A. Macdonald, et cetera. We've also had outside firms come in and do audits of the project management practices. So we've done a lot of that work. We have open book accounting with the firms that we're in partnership with, but I'll hand it over to Ms. Garrett.
Very briefly, please.
Very briefly, just in terms of Centre Block, we had an extensive internal audit that was conducted by internal PSPC auditors of our program execution plan, which includes everything on how we're going to manage money to risk, et cetera. And so that audit was completed last year and was a very substantial undertaking. Our financials are constantly spot audited within the department as well to make sure that we're paying for the goods and services, just to get a sense of the kinds of things that we're doing to ensure that there's a robust oversight framework managing the program.
Thank you for those answers. I'm just going to ask, this was, I'm from British Columbia. Parliament's very, very far away from many of the people I represent. And a few years ago when I was a staffer, my sister came to Ottawa to visit for the first time. And she walks up to the front of the parliamentary precinct and she says, "Brad, why is there a unicorn with a chain around its neck and its tongue sticking out?" And I said, "Well, Megan, the Canada bondage unicorn's a symbol of Canada." And when anyone walks through the parliamentary precinct, they see all these weird-looking types of creatures. And to this day, and maybe you could get back to the committee, I have asked the Library of Parliament, but I've never got a solid answer about what the unicorn with the chain around its neck and its tongue sticking out in front of Parliament Hill actually means to our country. So if you could report back to this committee, my little sister would love to know what the unicorn means for Canada and why it's so important to have on the front of our parliamentary precinct. I might
40
not.
40 seconds remaining.
Madam Chair, we've taken note of it and we'll do some research and get back to the committee.
Thank you. My sister is going to be very pleased.
Mr. Viss, would you like your last 20 seconds?
Yes, actually, and maybe you could also report back to the committee how contractors in British Columbia can access the contracts that will be coming forward, call for proposals. These are really lucrative jobs, and I know some of them can be done remotely, especially on the engineering and design side of things. So that would be very helpful to provide the committee as well, if that's okay.
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. Happy to.
Excellent. Thank you. And now 5 minutes to Mr. Fergus.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank the witnesses who have appeared here for being able to give us this update on the extraordinary project, extraordinary and extraordinarily complex project for the House of Commons and for the renovations of Canada's Parliament. Mr. Wright, and I think Mr. Patrice as well, you've mentioned in your comments or in an answer or several answers to questions, you were talking about the parliamentary precinct and the importance of creating an atmosphere that not only influences Parliament Hill, but that also extends to 3 other streets in downtown Ottawa. It seems to me, perhaps for security reasons or perhaps to create a meeting point for Canadians. Well, have you looked into the idea of pedestrianizing Wellington Street, especially right in front of the parliamentary precinct? Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. There had been discussions about Wellington during recent years, over the recent years, and more recently, a potential streetcar project raised the same questions yet again. And the idea was, should this go through Wellington Street? And if so, there would be possibilities of having this kind of conversation. And of course, there would be security-related benefits and for visitors as well. But of course, there's a downside as well to the city of Ottawa, and the downside would also be considerable. So it's important to talk about this. This idea is one which has been talked about from time to time. Mr. Patrice, do you have any other comments? No? Well, this brings me to another question, getting back to Ms. Blaney's question regarding space, not only for members of parliaments, but also for senators to be able to have committee meetings. I imagine that once the whole project is completed, you'll be talking about what's to be done with, what is that word? Sorry. Well, with the House of Commons here in West Block. Are there any plans to change that into committee rooms or offices? Or maybe it's going to be maintained so that it could be a second house for debate? Or is this something that hasn't yet been determined? Thank you for the question. Madam Chair, as for the temporary House chambers in the West Block, the plans have not been made. We recognize that between now and the end of the centre block construction, many things can change in terms of the needs of parliamentarians and various committees. What's important to say is that when this was designed and built, it was recognized that major changes might happen, including integrating various committee chambers or offices for MPs, or whatever the need of the time would be. The strength of the group, or of everybody involved in the rehabilitation project when it comes to the parliamentary precinct, the strength of this is experience and also the recognition that we have to be agile. And yesterday's plans may not necessarily be tomorrow's plans. We have to design for the future while learning from the history of the past. Mr. Fergus, 30 seconds. Thank you. A brief comment. This reflects your answer previously about the importance of leaving room to adjust, and that's why you can't always plan in construction one after the other, because you know that as time passes, there will have to be modifications to the project. Bravo. Thank you. Thank you very much. For our third round, we are going to begin with Mr. Duncan for 5 minutes, followed by Madame Romanado for 5 minutes, and then Madame de Bellefeuille for 2.5 minutes. And then Ms. Blaney for 2.5 minutes. The last will be Mr. Gertsen for 5 minutes. Mr. Duncan.
Madam Chair, perhaps before my time starts, just a note on for the agenda. Looking at it, we have the round left here, but if we have time to go, perhaps in camera briefly at the end. I'm looking at, we have, I have a couple of questions left, maybe not even the full amount. If there is time, we're willing to go in camera to finalize our agenda. And I'd say too, as opposed to doing it on Thursday, we can maximize our time. I know there's been some good questions today, but there may be want to maximize the time with Mr. Dion on Thursday. So if there's a willingness from your part, I'll just leave that in your hands to perhaps discuss after this round.
I'll just chime back really quickly. So I'm watching the time closely, trying to keep it moving. But the last round, which is a mirror of this round minus your second slot, has taken over 30 minutes. So we'll keep it moving. And then if it's possible, for sure, we'll maximize our time.
Okay. So my questions, perhaps are some follow-up. I believe there was some discussion last year in June, and I was mentioning before in my opening round about governance and some of the concerns, and you have the full slide of the many parliamentary partners you have to consult and get views on. There was some discrepancies with the Senate last year in terms of their requests for several committee rooms, and I think it might have been raised in different forms before. When it goes to governance, there was a request for, I believe it was an additional $100 million in work or project work to take place. The minister declined that. My first question is, what's the status of that? Has the Senate dropped that and acknowledged that, or is it a negotiation going on with parts of their side of the building, for lack of a term?
Yeah. Thank you very much for the question, Madam Chair. So on the issues that you kind of emphasized around finalizing some scope elements for the Centre Block and the Parliament Welcome Centre concerning the Senate, so the number of offices, the number of committee rooms, and a potential dedicated entry into the Parliament Welcome Centre. Those discussions are ongoing. We've had very productive conversations with the Senate, and I think hopefully those will conclude very shortly. But they're not. We're not completely. They haven't been rendered by the Senate at this point, but we're having productive conversations.
I'd say to that you're on time and on budget, unless the negotiations with the Senate go somewhere as well. So we talk about the completion of this, and this goes back to the governance. And again, as you mentioned in the Auditor General's report, there were some concerns, and I know through the working group that's going on addressing some of those. But at what point is the answer from the minister, or and again, who's leading this effort, and where does it end? Of where a no becomes a negotiation or a back and forth in terms of that timeline of moving things along, trying to get into the building in 10 years. Is there a timeline for negotiation? Have you got any directive from the minister, or have you gone to the minister to say, look, this needs to be finalized by X date so we can keep on time?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Madam Chair. This is, this is kind of the nub of the issue, if you will. We have great relationships and great partnership with the Houses of Parliament. Where the governance, and this is something that was pointed out previously, is there's not an integrated governance body at the political level. There's no informal mechanism for the Senate and the House and the minister to come together and have conversations and create alignment. So we get requirements from the Senate and requirements from the House, not from Parliament. So it is a challenge to reconcile those, and we are accountable to Parliament. So it is a challenge for the executive branch to do that reconciliation, and on behalf of Parliament, and to ensure that we have alignment between the Senate and the House and can move forward. We've had great success in bringing those things to resolution in the past. I'm convinced we will again, but it is a challenge within the governance frame.
The idea today is getting the briefing and getting the information and updates, but I think that is something that, and this is the challenge. I asked the question a couple of years ago as well, of where we have PROC, you have the Board of Internal Economy, you've got a subcommittee, you've got the Senate, and you've got all of those partners. And yes, the minister, the buck stops with the minister at the end of the day, but that is a major portfolio, let alone this being a major project, and it continues of where we have negotiations going on one side, and again, you're trying to keep to a time frame and to a budget, and are the parameters going on there. So I think that continues every time you've had this conversation, going back to the Auditor General's report 12 years ago, there continues to be questions about, and again, I'll say to you, for you coming to our committee or different work to say we're on time and on budget, there's I think governance factors that are stretching both those things out and complicating that, and I think that needs to be known to the players or who has the firm decision. So appreciate the background or an update on that. And I'm good with my time, Madam Chair.
Excellent. Thank you for the 30 seconds. Back. Ms. Romanado, 5 minutes to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation. I am new to PROC, so I've not had the chance to see all of this this project and have lots of questions. What will come of the current visitor center that is located between Centre Block and West Block? I know a lot of money was put into that, and unfortunately probably didn't get as much leverage out of it given COVID.
It's being explored right now. Obviously, once the Parliamentary Welcome Center becomes online, the need for that entrance for visitors is frankly limited and would be costly to operate. So one of the scenario is essentially repurpose the space, but also use it as a business continuity entrance.
Okay. You spoke a little bit about some of the efforts that will be improving the level of GHG in the building. We talked a little bit about geothermal. We talked about insulation, water retention. So if you could elaborate a little bit on, using gray water. Is there a plan for composting on Parliament Hill for that? Because that's something that we haven't seen in here. And also, given the fact we've eliminated, or it looks like we're going to eliminate some courtyards. We did with West Block. It looks like it might be the same in East Block. There's not a lot of green space for employees who work on the Hill to be able to maybe go outside, have lunch at a picnic table, and the House of Commons does employ a ton of people. So, what are the plans to make this workspace a little more green for the people that work here? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question, Madam Chair. And I'll pass to Ms. Garrett in a second. So just a couple of things there, and I'll kind of branch back on the Visitor Welcome Center to just add a piece to Mr. Patrice. So the main part of the Visitor Welcome Center will kind of interconnect with the Parliament Welcome Center as well, and as part of making that one integrated facility. So a lot of those investments will be kind of reused, if you will, as well, in addition to Mr. Patrice indicated. On the courtyards, so important to note that those were inaccessible, unused courtyards before, so you couldn't get into them. So it's really I would see this as more of a bonus for the building rather than taking anything away. As far as kind of the greening of the hill, that's a major part of the long-term vision and plan. The public opinion research that Mr. Patrice mentioned, that was one element that came back from the public on that issue as well. And I'll pass it over to Ms. Garrett to speak more about the sustainability efforts.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe just very quickly, outside and not necessarily sustainability related, but to the seating question, we will be doing some work to better plan the landscape and opportunities, and seating is one of the things, and obviously shade is often some feedback that we get usually that we're going to have to try and address as we go forward on the project. In terms of grey water, absolutely. Grey water systems is yet another one of those tools that we're going to be implementing to achieve that carbon neutrality. And maybe just a minor comment on the courtyards to supplement what Mr. Wright said. Those opportunities to use those courtyards as they were unused, they will hopefully become much better spaces and places for parliamentarians, and we can absolutely look at how we might green those and make sure that we put those elements into them. We can absolutely look at that as part of the planning and design.
1 minute, Ms. Ramanathan.
So I do have, it may sound like a bizarre suggestion, but I have been talking about this since I got elected in 2015. Parliamentarians move around the parliamentary precinct, and often we're bouncing from one meeting to another. We don't actually have any space to store our belongings. And I had been suggesting for years that we have a locker system. I know it sounds like we're back in high school, but maybe in a basement along a hallway where we could store, boots, our coat, whatever, so it's not in the lobby, so it's not using prime real estate. But also if we need to put a book or binder from a committee or something like that that is in a secure location. Is this a possibility? Because I was hoping it would be in this building. It's not. So I'm hoping that for in 10 years' time that we have a little space that we could keep our belongings in. Thank you.
Madam Chair, we've heard that comment, and probably from this member or other members, there'll be such space within the precinct at different spots.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I could not have asked Mr. Patrice for a shorter answer, so thank you. And now 2 minutes et demi pour vous, Madame de Bellefeuille.
2.5 minutes to you, Madame de Bellefeuille. Thank you very much, Chair. As you've mentioned, this is the first time I've been to PROC. I wanted to take my time granted to me for questions to congratulate you, because as a chair, I see that you are very concerned about ensuring that there's fair sharing of time between all the committee members. And as a Bloc Québécois whip, I can tell you that you are a model. And I think some of your colleagues could perhaps seek inspiration from you when they assume the chair. So I think it's remarkable, and I feel that this is a sincere wish on your part, and that you have made it possible for every member today to express themselves while respecting our Board of Internal Economy decisions. I don't have any other questions for the witnesses today. I'm satisfied with the answers that I've received, and I think that it's been a very rich meeting with a wealth of answers, and I'd like you to continue your work, Madam Chair, and to inspire your colleagues who are chairs of other committees. Well, thank you very much, Madame de Bellefeuille. I think we have a team. So when you have this kind of a team, it's easy to work together. So I'd like to thank all of you for your work and your communication. And thank you for taking your time to share such kind words. And I will continue to do everything that I can to ensure that we have a productive committee. And I think that's what Canadians want. And that's what we're going to try to do and what we're going to do for them.
2.5 minutes, 2.5 minutes to Miss Blaney.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And through you, I would just like to ask a few questions, and then I'll let you answer them just to conserve as much time as I can. The first question, I really appreciate what Mr. Viz said earlier. It would be very helpful to the committee, I think, to have sort of a regional breakdown of contracts, just so that we understand where across the country they're coming from. I think that the West is always wanting to make sure that it gets a component of that, and I think as a BC MP that I agree with that. So that would be very helpful to the committee. The other question that I just have around the really addressing the reality of the environment that we live in and having a carbon neutral facility, I'm really interested in just the costs that we are going to save at the other end of this. So I understand it's going to cost money to create this, but there was a discussion in your presentation a little bit about lowering some of those energy costs. So it would be great to sort of get an idea of what that would look like, because it's always good to hear that we're spending money to save money in the long run. And then the last quick question I have is just around the Welcome Center and security. I understand you can't go into details for very obvious reasons, but of course the welcoming area that we had previously was very cramped, very frustrating sometimes, especially I think for the amazing staff that were having to address security issues of making sure everybody moved through there. Sometimes for MPs who were trying to get people in for a meeting that they needed to get to. I remember sometimes being asked to run down and get people through that lineup as quickly as possible, but then people didn't always know who I was, and it became sort of this big issue. So I'm just curious about how you're addressing that, and if there's going to be clarity about who should go where and in what stream when they arrive. So there you go. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question, Madam Chair, and Mr. Patrice may want to add some elements in there. We can come back with that regional breakdown. On the sustainability costs, you're quite right. There are savings, and it it comes fairly close to cost neutral when you do all of the math. There's still a cost, but certainly the investments up front are you get a lot of savings over time. On the issue of the Parliament Welcome Centre, I mean, that really is about balance. It's a significant security enhancement for the precinct. It provides secure screening outside of the footprint of the buildings for the first time on the Hill, and that's fundamental. So it very much is a significant security feature, balanced with creating an open and welcoming environment for visitors to come in, and more than doubling the capacity for Canadians to be able to engage into the buildings, which is something we heard from the public opinion research as well. So I don't know if Michelle, there's...
Well, I'll just add, as Rob mentioned, the old visitors' entrance was less than optimal in relation to security, in addition to being less than optimal for tours, parliamentary business, and parliamentarian or accredited personnel. So the new design that is as proposed right now will offer obviously increased security in terms of distance from the main building, but also having dedicated lane for parliamentary business or accredited personnel through the buildings, and an increase for the tours. Thank you.
Excellent. That was quite the good use of that time. Thank you for your approach, Ms. Blaney. Now 5 minutes to Mr. Gerritsen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My first question, Madam Chair, has to do with, and I know it's been talked about, the relationship between members of the House and the Senate and the ongoing work in the working groups. But I do know at the beginning of this discussion in the last Parliament, I was on PROC then as well, we raised some concern with respect to the fact that senators in particular, of whom we will be sharing the building with, have a better continuity than members of the House by nature of the fact they don't have to get elected. And like I know for a fact that the three members from the Conservatives that sit on this committee weren't here in the last Parliament, and so we start to lose this continuity. And I hate to say this, and I mean it with all due respect, there becomes a bit of territorialism around the building. What aspects of the building are used by the Senate? What is used by members of the House? And I'm curious how you can preserve. For example, when in the last session, I received that you sent to my house. I think it was at the beginning of the pandemic, a massive binder with all these pages, and I sat there for a couple hours looking at the diagrams and everything. I don't know if other members have received that, newer members to this committee who weren't on the last one. They haven't. So this continuity is immediately lost. And I think it's very important to preserve that. So I'm just curious how you're preserving that if this is going to go on for another 10 years from membership on this committee, because it's going to change a lot more frequently than the Senate membership that's overseeing this.
That continuity for a long-term project is always an issue, but obviously there is continuity, both in terms of elected members, in terms of the continuity and your re-election from election to election. There's also something in terms of the way that the working group works. The working group that was created by the board, while it has its discussion and its dialogue in camera, publish its minutes 30 days after the meeting. So that's an important feature I would suggest in terms of continuity. And the other thing too, the chair of that working group reports to the Board of Internal Economy its recommendation. And that report takes place in public, and the discussion also takes place in public. So there's many, I believe, additional features, or there's been improvement in terms of, I will say, transparency and public reporting. Obviously, appearing before this committee is also creates a public record in terms of continuity that is transmitted from successive committee and creature from parliament to parliament and session to session.
Thank you. My other question has to do with the changing environment by which people will need in terms of commuting to the Hill. So I drive from Kingston. I drive an electric car. When I get here, I plug it in. When I started doing that 4 years ago, there was always availability. Now I'm finding when I show up here, there's no availability. We also know that there's a government mandate or policy that to have no more fossil fuel, or all cars must be net zero by 2035. What are we doing in terms of making sure that we're going to be providing for the change in vehicular traffic that comes to the Hill?
Thank you very much for the question, Madam Chair. So we'll work hand in hand with the Senate and the House of Commons on determining the requirements for electric charging stations, for example, and then as part of the long-term vision and plan, develop the strategies to put that in place. So that is an important comment. And when we kind of as far as getting consolidated, we wouldn't get out ahead of you and start putting infrastructure on the Hill without working closely with the House and the Senate as well. So developing those requirements and then putting that in place is important. But you're quite right. We've done a lot of work with the parliamentary partners around what parking of the future should look like when you look 50 years ahead. It's challenging to project, and it's difficult to make some of those choices now. There's no question about that. But we're doing an update to the long-term vision and plan at this point, which is about a gradual transition for the precinct so that it can work today, and it is also moving towards tomorrow, if you will.
Do I have any time left, Madam Chair?
I'm just going to say I didn't give you the 1 minute warning like I have for everyone else. Would you like a quick word? Are you okay? Sorry about that.
If I'm out of time, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So we have come to just 5 minutes left within PROC committee. I do want to thank the witnesses for being here. There is a little bit of work that we've asked of you to report back to committee. So we look forward to that information, and the clerk and I and committee members will be working on ensuring that we can perhaps find a time for representatives of each party to come and look at the status of West Block when public health guidelines permit. And we do hope after that time to have you back for any other questions or comments that we might have. But we appreciate your time and efforts, and we really do want to say thank you for extending your time with us today and being so kind to do it on a last minute's notice. Mr. Wright, Mr. Patrice, or Ms. Garrett, any comments? Mr. Obey, all of you, any comments real quick?
Merci beaucoup pour l'opportunité.
Well, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity.
A great day. I will be wrapping the meeting up right on time today, but while members are all here, there was 2 budgets that were shared around by the clerk with all members of the PROC committee. This does not require a motion. There will be a whole budget that comes that will require a motion, but this just requires an approval so that the clerk can continue to do the work that he and the team do to support us as PROC members. Are there any concerns with the budgets that were shared?
No concerns from our end.
No concerns from the NDP either.
Et je peux voir que Madame...
And I believe that Madame de Bellefeuille said the same thing. No concerns. Liberals?
So then we will, Mr. Clerk, you seem to have approval to continue to do your work, and we will see everyone on Thursday for our next PROC meeting. Please keep well and safe. Restez en santé, en sécurité.
Keep well, stay safe, and see you soon. Have a good rest of day. you.